So I was gonna do a little something different. I know this is usually like a theater blog, and I mean, dance is an art which has very similarities to theater. So I want to talk about this ballet. But first, if you don't know, which probably some of you do, a lot of you probably don't, is I have an internship at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, NJ Pac, and during this internship, I get to see a lot of different types of art. And yesterday, I got to see the New Jersey Ballet Company perform little sections of different ballets for their donors, and it was a really amazing experience. And I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. I mean, I usually don't tell you about the NJ Pack thing, but yesterday I just saw so many symbols, and what I came to the realization is that though a lot of the theater and ballet or dance kind of conventions are very similar, and in terms of like what they do and how their structure is very similar. I noticed that art in general is something that is a form of expression that evolves with society. A lot of things don't really like, you can't really see the difference, but at least in art, because we identify different things about different types of art, that you can really see its progression and how it reflects society. Um, so yeah, so like I said, I saw this um, ballet yesterday, and a good thing that I just want to preface this with is the person that I worked with on the ballet. She's actually a ballet artist, so she teaches now. She was a professional for 8 years, and now she's a teacher and she works at NJPAC. So I thought it was really cool because I got a chance to really pick her brain in terms of the different like forms of art and the different conventions and the different styles. Because she knew pretty much everything. It was really amazing. Okay, so how it worked, there were like a 5 act play. There were 5 different types of theater. I mean, types of ballet shown. Well, there were 5 different ballets, and there were some differences among them. The first one I saw was a masquerade, which was a piece that was choreographed by a person there. And actually, the lady, her name is Allison, that I was working with. It's her teacher. And so I really got an inside scoop on that, and I even got the chance to really talk to the teacher just for a little bit on her influence, the influences that she had when choreographing the piece. So the first piece, the theme of the whole night was a masquerade, and so the first piece was called Masquerade. And what they did is this piece is like it's called Balanche. I don't know if I'm saying that, or Balanchine style. And Balanchine was a Russian who came to the United States, and he created his whole like type of ballet, and it's all about the extension of expression. So it was full out extensions, and it was really beautiful and amazing. And the thing about this type of ballet is it doesn't really follow a story. Um, and it's so interesting because it reminds me, it's very neutral. It's considered a modern form, and it's the guy Balanchine who influenced the piece. He was like the premier choreographer in the 20th century, um, and so it was really cool. Now the thing I noticed, at first it started off, I wrote like some little notes in my hand, and I have this huge notepad full of all different scrabbles. So the first thing, I gotta go fast, the masquerade. So I told you about that. Now what Balanchine, what the lady, her name was BJ. I don't know. It was Betty Joe, I want to say. I can verify that later, but yeah, her name was BJ Sills. And what she said is music, well, ballet, or Balanchine's ballet is supposed to be music and dance form. So it's all about expression, and I just thought it was amazing. Like it had the way they did it. It was like a 5 act structure, even though this completely could be me reading into it, but it was like a 5 act structure, and they would have choral interludes in between each structure, which I thought was really cool. And what I noticed when watching this, because this is my first really introduction to ballet, is that it's so structured. I mean, it kind of reminds me in a sense, like there's certain ways to do things, and it's very plotted out. So what they do is they have first the core comes out, and then there's a trio, and there's a pas de deux, and the pas de deux has a subset, and where they're dancing together. There's two people. They dance together. Then the male has his solo. Then the female has her solo, and they dance together again. That's called the coda finale, the coda, which is the final piece. And then they go back, and then the core comes back out, and the pas de deux dance with the core, usually in front of the core. And it was just I never realized how structured, like, art, even though art is an expression of yourself, and it's expression of emotion. It's very structured. And with ballet, you know how theater, it's for the most part five act structure. That's like the base of theater. With ballet, the number's four. So there's like I said, there's the core trio, pas de deux, and then the end, which is that's four. And then within the pas de deux, there's together the two dancing together, the male lead, the female lead, and then they dance together again. That's another four. It's a very, very interesting thing. And another thing that I found just in this piece, and I'll move on to the next, is that ballet is such, there's this misconception or this misnomer that ballet is for, like, it's not really a manly art form. But the thing is, it started off all men one, and two is a very chivalrous thing. It came from France, and they're all about showing off the female. So everything in ballet is to show off the female. So even the bows, like the men step back, allow the female to take her bow. Then they bow together, and then the flowers are brought to the female. And the men, they always show off, like, here is I present to you my female. And I just thought it was amazing. Actually, it was a funny side note. The lady, she was telling me, Allison, she was telling me that that's how a lot of modern and Baroque dancing evolved out of this, because there's a lot of inequalities in ballet, but it's more geared towards the women, which I thought it was just weird, because usually art is, well, at least early art is male dominated. So we had the masquerade. And the masquerade, there was this one, oh my gosh, I wish you could have seen it. It was a very legato style, which is very smooth. And there was this one ballet dancer. She was from Russia, and she did a move in one swift motion, had her leg 180 degrees, and then flipped it in one swift motion, went the other way 180 degrees. I just couldn't believe, like, I wish a movement class could have seen that as well. The next thing I saw was Swan Lake. Now, with Swan Lake, I only did the masquerade. I saw the whole choreography for it, which was the original piece. Swan Lake, I only saw the death scene. And this piece, I just want to say, okay, so it was very slow. It was all about control. It's using what's called the Vaganova, what. It's a technique that's all about levels and control. And what I equated this to was very similar to No Theater. No Theater, you know how they're the very plotted out movements of each actor is very similar to this piece. And this was totally, again, me probably connecting way too much into it. The female lead of Swan Lake, it was the White Swan, was Japanese. And you can see every single move. Like, she can clearly do the 180 degree, I don't know what it's called, but the 180 degree leg up thing, but she chose not to. She would do 90 degrees perfect, 45 degrees perfect. Every move was just so slow and so methodical. And also, this piece actually allowed me to know something else. Like, ballet, the dancers, they are in character. Which I thought was very connected to theater. They are in character. Even when they're doing their bows, like the first one, it was a masquerade, so it was an upbeat, but it was still very legato. The second one was a lot more solemn because of the death scene, and she's slowly dying, and it was actually, this was a pas de deux, and they were dancing together, and they were both so emotionally attached to it. And okay, I'll go to the next one really quick because I got to say something big about overall things. And then I saw something called Paraduas, and this was a more modern piece. It was very lyrical, and this one, the other two, they had tutus, and their hair were in buns, and the guy was in tights, and It was very, it was very line oriented. They didn't really they didn't really explore angles, but the paraduas, they really explored different movements like angles, and it was a lot more sensual. And it was from Brazil, and it was a postmodern, a postmodern form, because it really they didn't wear tutus. She wore a dress. They didn't have any tights on. They just had shoes. They just had the ballet shoes. She had her hair down. It was very flowy, and it was completely beautiful. Then there was intermission. Then the next piece was the Dance of the Hours, which is it's a classical piece. This was classical ballet at its fullest. It was Italian, and the cool thing about Dance of the Hours is actually the piece is brought into. It's like what am I want to say? It's a part of an opera actually, which I thought was really cool. Like it's a choral interlude, or an interlude of like a interlude. And this is very formal, traditional, beautiful. Had a very, it had a storyline, but it was just mimicking what was going on in the opera. And then the last thing was it was the Faust story, and this was amazing. And this one, it's called a bacchanae, or like they're supposed to be like, this is their drunk dance, and it was like a lot of Greek. It was like a lot of Greek influence on it, because they had the women had tunics on, men had the vines across them, and they were trying to evoke nakedness. So what they did was the men did not wear a top, and they had nude colored bottoms, and you could see just the strength in it overall. It was very classical, amazing, very clean, very clear story. There was a lot more acting in this one. Now let me get to that really quick before I go, because I only have 15 minutes. YouTube only gives you 15 minutes. I'm like, what? Anyways, what I noticed, because the company was a very diverse company. There were Brazilians, there were Americans, there were Russians, there were Japanese people. So a very, very diverse company. And what I noticed is the Russians specifically had a lot more facial expression when they danced. And what Allison was telling me is that Russians not only take, for ballet, they not only take ballet class, but they also take acting class and pantomime class. So you can see that they definitely had a lot more of a training of outwardly expressing all their emotions right on their face. And it was really amazing. Like, the Japanese were very solemn. Americans did express, but it was very subtle, almost like realistic acting. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And I mean, I got to meet a lot of them. I got to talk to the director, and they're all very wonderful people. They love what they do, and you have to. It's a very labor intensive art form. I mean, Allison was telling me that, out of the hierarchy of the arts, ballet is one of the, probably the lowest, but they do work probably the hardest at their form, and they don't get paid a lot. You never hear about a multi-million-dollar making ballet artist. You hear about the musicians who make millions of dollars. You hear about the painters who make millions of dollars for their paintings. You hear about the actors who make it, the directors, but you never hear about the ballet dancers making. And she was telling me about Black Swan, and she said, in her opinion, it was very, very, I mean, like, aside from her actually turning into Black Swan, it was very close to what the mindset you need to have, I mean, to perform ballet, because you have to love it. There's no other reason to do it other than loving it. And I just thought that was really cool and clever, and it was true for the most part. I mean, I'm not saying you don't love other art forms, but this one, it was a very, you really have to have a passion for it in order to really do it. Oh, last thing. Like I was saying before, there's the legato. The pieces really were like legato. The Brazilian one was staccato. The last two were pretty legato, with the last one really being a joyous dance. So, I mean, I was so happy. I just want to, it was amazing. It was a wonderful experience. I encourage you to go see a ballet. It's very, very theatrical, and it was a great experience. And I plan on seeing more. Got to break out into different arts. So yeah, peace. See you next time.